This presentation is on capital punishment, research by Group 2, which is Mallory Jones, Laura Compton, Lucinda Mangum, and Rebecca Wing. So the core problem being investigated here would be, is it okay to let the government decide to take someone's life for a crime they committed, more specifically a more serious crime such as murder? So here's a little background information. The death penalty has been around for thousands of years. The first established death penalty laws date as far back as the 18th century BC in the Code of King Hammurabi of Babylon, which codified the death penalty for 25 different crimes. The first recorded death penalty that was carried out was in the United States, which occurred in 1608. Eventually, in the late 1700s, the abolitionist movement started in parts of the world, and the U.S. started to move away from capital punishment. Currently, the death penalty is banned in 141 countries, that is 2/3 of the world, and 18 states do not practice the death penalty. Legal dynamics. Cases without the threat of the death penalty on average cost $740,000. Cases where the death penalty is an option cost on average $1.26 million. The U.S. is currently the only country who allows the death penalty to be an option in cases of those found guilty who are mentally handicapped. Currently, the biggest issue is how states are killing inmates now that the drug companies that make the cocktail that was once used for lethal injection no longer allow the states to use it for that purpose. The states didn't listen, so the drug company that made the drug, Hespera, quit making the drug altogether since they didn't want the drug to be used in that fashion. This isn't the only company that has done this either. There are drug companies in Great Britain and Denmark that have denied the U.S. using the drugs for killing the inmates. This has caused many states in the U.S. to go black market drug sales in places like India to get the drug that they need. The FDA and DEA have had to step in to make sure the drugs even meet safety standards. There have been several botched executions due to experimental drugs, one of the most recent being Joseph Wood, who took almost 2 hours to die after being injected with the experimental cocktail. This happened in Arizona. This is bringing out even more debate on if we should use the death penalty. Since there has been so much trouble with finding drugs that work, Utah is now turning back to firing squad for its executions. There is a lot of debate on capital punishment because of the different worldviews, but even our Christian worldview isn't black and white on the topic. Many Christians support capital punishment due to the fact that the Bible claims it to have been designed by God Himself to reprimand those who commit certain sins. In fact, God encourages the use of capital punishment in the very first book of the Bible. Genesis 9:6 states, "Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God has God made man." God expresses to Noah and his sons that those who commit murder are destroying the image of God and should endure the punishment of death. There are also several of other references to the use of capital punishment for murder, disobedience to parents, witchcraft, adultery, and homosexual acts. Although it is evident that the Bible and the Old Testament supports the use of capital punishment for crimes, it is also clear that some parts of the Old Testament are no longer relevant to this day and time. For example, in Deuteronomy 25:5, it is commanded that if one's brother dies, they should marry his wife to continue on the family name of the brother and to continue to populate the earth. Since we are no longer bound to the harsh Old Testament laws because of the gift of Christ, and because populating the earth is no longer an issue, this command is no longer relevant to today's time and is not practiced. This idea can also be used for capital punishment. Today, if capital punishment was used every time a son disobeyed a parent, or every time someone cheated on their spouse, then a large range of the population would be sentenced to death. There are also verses in the New Testament that support capital punishment. Romans 13:1-7 stresses the importance of abiding by government authority and respecting their use of punishment for a crime. Verse 1 says, "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established." The authorities that exist have been established by God. Verse 4 says, "For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. There are also references in the Old Testament that are against capital punishment. The most obvious one would be the commandment, "Thou shalt not murder," in Exodus 20:13. Also in Genesis 4, God protects Cain from being executed after he murdered his brother. John 8:7 says, "He who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first." In this passage, Jesus forgave the woman who committed adultery. In Matthew 6:15 it says, "But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses." This passage just continues talking about Jesus teaching believers to forgive. The New Testament has an overall theme of redemption and forgiveness, so it also has references that are against capital punishment. In Matthew 7:1 it says, "Judge not, that you be not judged." The New Testament taught believers to not judge, and by giving someone the death penalty, we are judging their actions. In Romans 12:14, 17 and 19, it says, "Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Repay no one evil for evil. Do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay,' says the Lord." Paul taught believers to not do to others what had been done to them when it comes to evil actions, and he also taught that revenge is for the Lord, not for human beings. Unlike Christianity, Buddhism makes it very clear that they are against capital punishment. Buddhist dogma places great importance on the care of the universe and on treating everyone with constant compassion. It also declares that violence of any kind, including physical punishment, whether it be towards man or creature, is strictly forbidden and is considered a violation of the Buddhist doctrine. Buddha stated that an action, even if it brings benefit to oneself, cannot be considered a good action if it causes physical and mental pain to another being. Buddhism argues capital punishment is unethical, not only because it entails harming another being, but also because it requires sullying the pureness of one's own heart, mind, and soul. Buddhists believe that punishment should be carried out with compassion, not through hatred nor desire for wealth, or for retribution, since retribution is another name for revenge, and revenge implies the action is done with anger, and therefore would burden the executioner with hatred and its resultant poor karma. We have gathered our conclusion on capital punishment based on our Christian worldview ideas and our own personal experiences. We use both the teleological and deontological ethical theories because we are drawing our ideas from the fact that we believe there is an existence of a God, and we are judging the morality of capital punishment based on the rules given to us in the Bible. Although the Old Testament contains harsh commands and ideas for capital punishment, we side more with the New Testament idea that vengeance is with God, and He should be the one who deals with it, whether that is after we die or through the use of government authority. One of our group members has had a friend who was convicted of manslaughter and is currently in jail for defending herself against an abusive ex. If she had been convicted and put up for the death penalty, I think it would have been a travesty for justice. Therefore, if capital punishment is to be remained legalized, it should be 100% certain that the one being convicted is guilty. Also, the drugs used to put one to death should be 100% effective and FDA approved.